What if I told you that the most profound secret in Hades 2 isn't hidden in some obscure dialogue branch or buried in ancient mythological texts, but has been staring us in the face from the very first moment we meet our mentor? What if the relationship between student and teacher, between Melinoë and Hecate, represents something far more complex and emotionally devastating than we ever imagined? Tonight, we're diving deep into one of the most brilliant narrative reveals in modern gaming. A secret so fundamental that it reframes everything we thought we knew about fate, time, identity, and the very nature of sequels themselves. This isn't just about a plot twist. This is about how Supergiant Games took the ancient myths of Greece and wove them into a story that speaks to the deepest human desires to rewrite our mistakes, to guide our younger selves, and to break free from the cycles that define us. Before we dive in, I'd really appreciate a quick like or even a subscribe. It helps more than you know. I'm always curious where you are listening from. So, drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. I love seeing our little global community. I'll also play you a short clip right now of the in-game dialogue to provide context on tonight's topic.
You had an audience with the three Fates. Your incantation from so many nights ago must have taken effect. Hermes indicated they're in good spirits, but shall be continuing their leave. Well done drawing them out, nevertheless.
Thank you, Headmistress. I get the impression that they sought me more so than the other way around, but at least we know they're safe. They also mentioned you.
They did they? In what capacity?
They said you've... Well, is there someplace more private where we can discuss this, do you think?
Let's to the springs. You've earned the rest. And we can sit and talk about what's on your mind, and theirs.
Just right.
Ah, but that's not bad. So, what do the three weaving sisters know of me then, You were about to say?
They told me... I believe the phrase they used was you had pulled some strings. They didn't elaborate, but suggested I ask you about it.
Pulled strings. I know full well what they meant. But to this point I was uncertain whether they did. Let me twist your question back. What do you suppose they implied?
I got the sense they felt that you had altered their designs somehow. Pulling strings, changing their weavings, and not in a small way either, but I merely guess.
You don't merely anything, Melinoë. Well, if those three already know my past, you ought to know it too. And 'tis easier to explain, I suppose, if you look upon me as I am.
Headmistress, what? You're beautiful. But what is this? I don't understand. Some trick you're playing, or some glamour, or...?
No. The trick is when the veil is on. Look upon me, and do not avert your eyes. I know those eyes better than you.
How is this possible? Who are you?
When I was a mere babe, I washed up on the bank of the Hecate with naught but moonlight to guide me. Selene looked out for me, informed me that the Titan Chronos took my family, and that I alone escaped. Thus, I trained.
You trained for the task. Death to Chronos. You attempted all of that before I did.
Before is not entirely correct. I was a capable student, but very raw. Vengeance was my headmistress. And one night I found the wretch, spewed every curse that I knew, and descended into the abyss of his subconscious.
But I had you to teach me to descend to the abyss of the subconscious. You mean to say you figured it out entirely on your own? That's impossible.
Speaking from experience, I beg to differ. But at any rate, something did go awry. Time and nightmare fused, and I discovered I was someplace else. I sought the end of time, but had arrived somewhere closer to the beginning.
And then you lived, for eons, waiting for the weavings of the fates, and me, for a second chance. Headmistress, Gods.
I dared not tamper with the fates' designs more than was strictly needed. In this form, I ingratiated myself to your father and mother, became handmaiden to the queen, in fact. Thus, when Chronos inevitably struck, they gave their newborn daughter not to the river Styx, but to me.
Then, you did everything in your power to prepare me, so that I might succeed where you failed.
Correct. 'Tis as I always told you, I am not your mother, Melinoë. Neither did I have one myself. However, I had reason to be confident in your abilities. So, there you are. Oh, you must hate me for all this.
No. How can you even say that still, Headmistress? I love you, and you are my mother, whether you can admit it or not. And even if we're far too much alike.
I love you too, of course, Melinoë, with all my heart and soul. Far more than I could ever love myself. And I am so sorry for all that you had to endure, for the family you never had.
But I have my family. I have you.
Neria's soul must know of this, I trust you understand. The three fates, fine, and we and no one else. Now then, shall we pretend that none of this transpired?
I'll be discreet, of course, but won't pretend.
The secret is this. Hecate, the immortal witch who has been training Melinoë for her mission of vengeance, is actually Melinoë herself. An earlier version from a previous timeline who lived, fought, failed, and was cast back through time to watch over her own younger soul. She is literally trying to guide herself through the same pain she once endured, hoping that this time things might be different. But before you dismiss this as simple science fiction wrapped in mythological clothing, understand that this revelation transforms everything. It explains why Hecate's teaching methods feel so personal, so intimate, so filled with both love and barely contained anguish. It explains why she pushes Melinoë so hard, why she seems to know exactly what her student needs to hear, and why her guidance feels less like instruction and more like confession. This secret also explains something else entirely. The world of Hades, too, isn't quite the same as the world of the original Hades. Characters appeared different, relationships have shifted, and the very fabric of reality seems altered. That's because it is altered. When Hecate manipulated the threads of fate to create this new timeline, she didn't just give herself another chance. She rewrote the entire world, spinning a new reality from the remnants of the old one. The fates themselves acknowledge this when they mention that Hecate pulled some strings. This isn't metaphorical. She literally reached into the tapestry of destiny and rewove it, creating a universe where Melinoë could exist and where the mistakes of the past might be corrected. But as we'll discover, some mistakes can't be fixed through repetition. Some wounds can't be healed through vengeance. And sometimes, the very act of trying to rewrite history creates new problems that require entirely different solutions. If you enjoy topics like this, I'd really appreciate a quick like or even a subscribe. It helps more than you know. You can listen along to this video playing in the background, or if you plan on falling asleep, dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. In ancient mythology, Melinoë and Hecate were often considered different aspects of the same divine entity. Scholars have long debated whether they were separate goddesses or simply different names for the same cosmic force. Supergiant Games has taken this mythological ambiguity and transformed it into literal truth. The student and mentor aren't just connected by divine lineage or shared purpose. They are the same being, separated by time, experience, and the weight of failure. This creates a narrative structure unlike anything we've seen in gaming. Every lesson Hecate teaches is an act of self-love and self-forgiveness. Every harsh word is born from the knowledge of what lies ahead. Every moment of tenderness carries the weight of someone who has lived through unimaginable loss and is desperately trying to spare her younger self the same fate. It's a story about the conversations we wish we could have with our past selves, about the guidance we wish we'd received, and about the terrible burden of knowledge that comes with experience. But the implications go even deeper than personal psychology. On a meta-narrative level, Hecate's secret mirrors the very structure of roguelike games themselves. Every run through the underworld is an attempt to rewrite fate, to learn from previous failures, to try again with new knowledge and different choices. Just as the player grows stronger through repeated attempts, Hecate has used her cosmic power to give herself, and by extension the player, another chance at success. This transforms the act of playing Hades 2 into something profound. We're not just controlling Melinoë as she fights her way through Chronos' domain, we're participating in Hecate's desperate attempt to guide her younger self toward a better outcome. Every death, Every restart, every small improvement becomes part of a larger story about the nature of growth, learning, and the refusal to accept defeat. The genius of this revelation is how it recontextualizes everything we thought we understood about the story's themes. Hades, too, initially appears to be about vengeance, about a daughter seeking to rescue her family and destroy the Titan who wronged them. But with Hecate's secret revealed, we understand that the true story is about something much more complex. It's about the relationship between our past and future selves, about the wisdom that comes from failure, and about the realization that some problems can't be solved through force alone. Hecate's coldness, which initially seems like typical mentor stoicism, becomes heartbreaking when we understand its true source. She's not distant because she doesn't care. She's distant because she cares too much, because she knows exactly what Melinoë is going through, and because she's terrified of making the same mistakes again. Her strict training regimen isn't about creating a perfect warrior. It's about trying to prepare her younger self for challenges that she knows are coming, based on painful first-hand experience. This also explains why the story's resolution requires both Melinoë and Zagreus working together. Melinoë, even with all of Hecate's training and guidance, cannot defeat Chronos alone because she embodies the same vengeful spirit that led to Hecate's original failure. Zagreus, born from reconciliation and empathy rather than vengeance and isolation, represents a different approach entirely. He can bring peace where she cannot, not because he's stronger, but because he approaches conflict with a fundamentally different philosophy. The theme becomes clear. You cannot fix the past by destroying it. You cannot heal old wounds by opening new ones. Sometimes, the only way forward is to accept what happened, learn from it, and choose a different path entirely. This is why Hecate's ultimate act of love isn't teaching Melinoë to be a better warrior. It's teaching her to be a better person than Hecate was in her first life. On a broader level, this story speaks to the nature of sequels themselves, both in gaming and in storytelling generally. How do you continue a story that seemed complete? How do you revisit familiar characters and themes without simply repeating what came before? Supergiant's answer is brilliant in its simplicity. You don't just continue the story. You reveal that the story was always larger than it appeared, that what seemed like an ending was actually just one chapter in a much longer tale. Hecate's secret transforms Hades, too, from a sequel into something unprecedented, a story about the relationship between sequels and originals, about how new stories grow from old ones, and about the ways that revisiting familiar ground can reveal entirely new depths. It's a meditation on the nature of mythology itself, on how ancient stories continue to evolve and find new meaning across generations. But perhaps most importantly, it's a deeply human story about self-acceptance, about learning to forgive our past selves for their failures, and about the courage required to try again even when we know how difficult the path ahead will be. Hecate didn't rewrite fate because she was confident in success. She did it because she refused to accept that failure was final, that one timeline's tragedy had to define all possible futures. This is why Hecate's secret matters so much, why it represents something genuinely revolutionary in video game storytelling. It takes the mechanical structure of a roguelike game, the mythological complexity of ancient Greek religion, and the emotional depth of intergenerational trauma, and weaves them together into something that speaks to fundamental questions about identity, growth, and the possibility of redemption. Tonight we're going to explore every aspect of this revelation. We'll examine how it changes our understanding of both Hecate and Melinoë as characters. We'll discuss the mythological foundations that make this twist feel authentic rather than arbitrary. We'll analyze how it reframes the relationship between Hades 1 and Hades 2, and what it suggests about the nature of storytelling in an age of endless sequels and reboots. We'll also delve into the emotional implications of this secret, exploring what it means for someone to literally become their own mentor, to guide themselves through trauma they've already experienced, and to love someone who is simultaneously themselves and a completely different person. It's a psychological complexity that most stories wouldn't even attempt, let alone execute with the grace and nuance that Supergiant has achieved. So settle in for a journey through time, fate, and the deepest mysteries of identity. We're about to discover why Hecate's big secret isn't just a clever plot twist. but a profound statement about the nature of growth, the power of second chances, and the endless human capacity for self-transformation. This is the story of how a witch became a teacher, how a failure became a guide, and how the end of one story became the beginning of something entirely new. Chapter 1. The Mentor's Mask. Examining Hecate's behavior and teaching methods through the lens of someone training their younger self, analyzing her emotional distance and the weight of foreknowledge, let's consider Hecate's detached demeanor, her cryptic pronouncements, and her relentless focus on Melinoë's training. What if these weren't simply the traits of a powerful goddess, but the carefully constructed facade of someone burdened with a secret, someone acutely aware of the stakes? Imagine the weight of knowing not only what happened, but what have happened. Hecate exists outside the normal flow of time. She's seen the rise and fall of entire timelines. She's witnessed Melinoë's failures, her triumphs, her deaths countless times over. How could that not affect her interactions? It's easy to interpret her emotional distance as coldness, as a lack of investment in Melinoë's success. But what if it's a form of self-preservation? What if, on some level, Hecate is protecting herself from the pain of reliving those failures, from the anguish of seeing her younger self repeatedly face insurmountable odds? Think about it. She's not just teaching a student, she's guiding a past version of herself. Every lesson, every correction, every piece of advice is, in essence, a conversation with her own former self. It's a chance to right old wrongs, to avoid past mistakes, to finally achieve the victory that eluded her before. This perspective casts Hecate's training methods in a whole new light. Her seemingly harsh criticisms become acts of tough love, born from the desire to shield Melinoë from the pain she herself experienced. Her cryptic instructions are not meant to confuse, but to force Melinoë to think for herself, to develop the resilience and resourcefulness needed to survive. And what about the moments when Hecate seems to hold back? When she refrains from offering a crucial piece of information? Could that be because she knows that some lessons can only be learned through experience, through the crucible of failure? That sometimes the only way to truly understand something is to make the mistake yourself? The weight of foreknowledge is a heavy burden to bear. It can lead to cynicism, to despair, to the belief that nothing truly matters because everything is predetermined. But it can also be a powerful motivator, a driving force that compels you to do everything in your power to change the future, to prevent the mistakes of the past from repeating themselves. Hecate, in her role as mentor, embodies this duality. She is both detached and deeply invested, both cynical and hopeful. She knows the odds are stacked against Melinoë, but she refuses to give up. Because on some level, she's not just fighting for Melinoë's future, she's fighting for her own. Consider her initial interactions with Melinoë. She's assessing, testing, probing. She's trying to gauge how much Melinoë remembers, how much of the past is still accessible to her. Is Melinoë a blank slate, a fresh start? Or does she carry within her the echoes of past lives, the scars of previous battles? Hecate's questions aren't just about Melinoë's abilities, they're about her potential, her capacity for growth. She's looking for signs of the strength, the resilience, the determination that will be needed to face Chronos. And she's trying to determine if this iteration of Melinoë is different, if she possesses the spark that was missing before. Think about the training grounds, the endless cycle of combat, the relentless pursuit of improvement. It's not just about honing Melinoë's skills, it's about instilling in her the discipline, the focus, the mental fortitude that will be essential in the final battle. Hecate is forging Melinoë into a weapon, a force of nature capable of challenging even the Titans. But she's also trying to protect her, to shield her from the horrors that await. She knows the price of victory, the sacrifices that will have to be made, and she's trying to prepare Melinoë for that reality. But how much can she truly reveal? How much can she tell Melinoë without compromising the timeline, without creating paradoxes that could unravel the very fabric of reality? That's the tightrope she walks, the delicate balance she must maintain. The mentor's mask is a shield, a defense mechanism against the overwhelming weight of responsibility. It allows Hecate to maintain her composure, to remain focused on the task at hand, even when her heart is breaking. But behind that mask, there's a deep well of emotion, a profound sense of empathy for the younger version of herself who is about to embark on a perilous journey. And it's that empathy, that love, that ultimately drives her to do everything in her power to ensure Melinoë's success. Let's examine her choice of words, the subtle nuances in her tone. There are moments where the mentor facade slips, where the weight of her past experiences bleeds through. These are the moments when we glimpse the true Hecate, the one who has suffered, the one who has learned, the one who is desperately trying to prevent history from repeating itself. Listen closely to her warnings, her pronouncements about fate and destiny. They're not just abstract philosophical concepts, they're reflections of her own personal struggles, her own battles against the forces that seek to control her. She's not just teaching Melinoë how to fight, she's teaching her how to think, how to adapt, how to break free from the chains of predetermined outcomes. She's empowering her to forge her own destiny, to become the master of her own fate. And that, perhaps, is the greatest lesson of all. It's not about simply following in Hecate's footsteps, it's about surpassing her, about becoming something even greater. It's about learning from her mistakes, about building upon her successes, about creating a future that is brighter, more hopeful, more just than the past. Consider the moments when Melinoë questions Hecate's methods, when she expresses her doubts and fears. Hecate doesn't dismiss them, she acknowledges them. She understands the burden that Melinoë carries, the weight of expectation that rests upon her shoulders. But she also knows that Melinoë is capable of overcoming those challenges, of rising to the occasion. She sees in her the potential for greatness, the spark of divinity that can ignite the darkness and bring forth a new era of peace and prosperity. The mentor's mask is not impenetrable. It's a tool, a device that allows Hecate to navigate the complexities of her role. But beneath that mask, there's a heart that aches for the past, a soul that yearns for a better future. And it's that heart, that soul, that ultimately guides her actions, that compels her to do everything in her power to help Melinoë succeed. It's a form of self-love, extended across time itself. Now, consider the implications of this perspective on the overall narrative of Hades 2. If Hecate is essentially training her younger self, then the entire game becomes a reflection on the nature of self-improvement, of learning from past mistakes, of striving to become the best version of yourself. It's a powerful message, one that resonates deeply with the human experience. We all have regrets. We all have moments when we wish we could go back and do things differently, but we can't. All we can do is learn from our mistakes and try to make better choices in the future. Hecate, in her unique position outside of time, has the opportunity to do just that. She can guide Melinoë, her younger self, down a different path, one that leads to victory and redemption. And in doing so, she can heal the wounds of the past, not just for herself, but for all those who have suffered under the reign of Chronos. She can rewrite history, not just for the underworld, but for the entire world. But this raises a critical question. If Hecate is so powerful, if she possesses such vast knowledge and experience, why doesn't she simply defeat Chronos herself? Why does she need Melinoë? Why does she entrust this crucial task to a younger, less experienced version of herself? The answer, perhaps, lies in the very nature of time itself. Hecate's interventions have already altered the timeline, creating a new reality in which Melinoë exists. But she can't simply erase the past, she can only guide it, shape it, influence it. She needs Melinoë to be the one to ultimately defeat Chronos, because that's the only way to truly change the future. She can't do it for her. Melinoë must do it herself. And that's the essence of mentorship, the true meaning of guidance. It's not about imposing your will on someone else, it's about empowering them to find their own strength, to discover their own potential, to become the best version of themselves. Hecate understands this. She knows that Melinoë must forge her own path, must make her own mistakes, must learn her own lessons. And she's there to guide her, to support her, to encourage her along the way. But she can't do it for her. And that's why the mentor's mask is so important. It allows Hecate to maintain the necessary distance, to avoid interfering too much, to allow Melinoë to grow and develop on her own. It's a delicate balance, a constant dance between guidance and independence. And it's a reflection of the complex relationship between Hecate and Melinoë, between mentor and student, between past and future. Consider the moments of vulnerability that Hecate reveals, the cracks in her carefully constructed facade. These are the moments when the true cost of her knowledge, the burden of her responsibility. She knows what's coming. She knows the sacrifices that will have to be made. She knows the pain that Melinoë will endure, and she can't do anything to stop it. All she can do is prepare her, guide her, and hope that she's strong enough to survive. And that's the hardest part of being a mentor, the most difficult aspect of bearing the weight of foreknowledge. It's knowing that you can't protect your student from everything, that they must face their own challenges, must learn their own lessons. But you can be there for them, you can support them, you can encourage them, and you can hope that they'll emerge from the darkness stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. So, as we delve deeper into the story of Hades 2, let's keep this perspective in mind. Let's look beyond the mentor's mask and see the true Hecate, the one who is burdened with the weight of foreknowledge, the one who is desperately trying to guide her younger self down a better path. And let's appreciate the complexity of her role, the challenges she faces, and the sacrifices she makes. Because in the end, her story is not just about defeating Chronos, it's about the power of self-improvement, the importance of learning from our mistakes, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. But how did Hecate, even this mentor, this figure capable of manipulating time and guiding her past self, what cataclysmic event transformed her into the enigmatic goddess before us? To understand that, we must journey back to the beginning, to the echoes of ancient myth that whisper the true origins of Hecate and Melinoë. That is where we will find the answers, buried deep within the annals of Greek religious tradition. Chapter 2: Echoes of Ancient Myth. Exploring the mythological foundations that make Hecate and Melinoë's connection feel authentic, diving deep into Greek religious traditions and the concept of divine aspects. The threads that bind Hecate and Melinoë are far older and deeper than the underworld itself. To truly understand their connection, we need to journey back, not just to the original Hades game, but millennia into the past, to the very roots of Greek religious belief. Think of the Greek pantheon not as a collection of individual gods, but as a spectrum of divine power, constantly shifting and reforming. Gods weren't fixed entities, they were fluid, adaptable, and capable of manifesting in multiple forms. This concept is key to understanding the relationship between Hecate and Melinoë. What if I told you that Melinoë isn't just a student of Hecate, but a facet, a hidden aspect of the goddess herself? It sounds radical, doesn't it? But the ancient Greeks had a name for this: divine epithets. Epithets were essentially nicknames, descriptive titles that highlighted specific qualities or powers of a god. Zeus wasn't just Zeus, he was Zeus the Thunderer, Zeus the Hospitable, Zeus the King. Each epithet represented a different facet of his divine nature. Now consider Hecate. She's a goddess of crossroads, magic, and the night. But her power extends far beyond these domains. She's also associated with childbirth, necromancy, and the protection of households. Each of these associations could be seen as a different facet of her being, a different expression of her divine will. Melinoë, in this context, isn't just a random demigod seeking guidance. She embodies a specific aspect of Hecate, her connection to the dead, her power over nightmares, and her role as a guide to lost souls. Think of it like a prism. White light, representing the full spectrum of Hecate's divinity, enters the prism. As it passes through, it refracts, separating into distinct colors. Melinoë is one of those colors, a concentrated beam of Hecate's power focused on a specific task, confronting death and the horrors that lie beyond. This concept of divine aspects wasn't just a theological abstraction, it was deeply ingrained in Greek religious practice. Worshippers would invoke different epithets of a god depending on their specific needs and desires. If you were a traveler seeking safe passage, you might pray to Zeus, the protector of travelers. If you were a woman in labor, you might invoke Hecate as the goddess of childbirth. These weren't just empty words. They were seen as a way to connect with the specific facet of the god that could best address your needs. It was a recognition that the divine wasn't a monolithic entity, but a complex and multifaceted force that could be accessed in different ways. But where does Melinoë fit into all of this, historically? Is there precedent for Hecate birthing, creating, or even embodying a daughter who shares her power? The answer, surprisingly, is complicated. Our understanding of Hecate has evolved over centuries, shaped by different cultures and religious traditions. In some accounts, she's a solitary goddess, a powerful and independent figure who answers to no one. In others, she's associated with other deities, such as Artemis or Persephone, blurring the lines between their individual identities. One of the most intriguing aspects of Hecate is her connection to the ancient mysteries. These were secret religious rituals that promised initiates a deeper understanding of the divine and a path to immortality. Hecate was often invoked in these rituals, seen as a guide to the underworld and a protector against evil spirits. The Orphic hymns, a collection of religious poems from ancient Greece, offer a glimpse into the mystical side of Hecate. They describe her as a powerful and enigmatic figure, a queen of the night who holds the keys to life and death. These hymns also hint at a deeper connection between Hecate and the cycle of rebirth. She's not just a goddess of death, she's also a goddess of renewal, a force that helps souls navigate the transition from one life to the next. This brings us back to Melinoë. Her ability to resurrect after each failed attempt to defeat Chronos mirrors Hecate's connection to the cycle of rebirth. It's as if Melinoë is constantly being reborn, each time learning from her mistakes and growing stronger. But the most compelling evidence for the connection between Hecate and Melinoë lies in their shared iconography. Both are associated with torches, symbols of illumination and guidance. Both are often depicted with dogs, creatures that represent loyalty and protection. And both are linked to the crossroads, places where paths diverge and choices must be made. These shared symbols aren't just coincidences. They're visual cues that point to a deeper connection, a shared essence that binds these two figures together. They tell you that Melinoë isn't just a student learning from a teacher. She's an extension of Hecate's own divine will, a manifestation of her power in the mortal realm. Think about the implications of this. If Melinoë is a facet of Hecate, then her journey to defeat Chronos isn't just a personal quest, it's a reflection of Hecate's own struggles and aspirations. It's as if Hecate is reliving her own past, learning from her mistakes, and attempting to rewrite her own destiny through Melinoë. And that's where the idea of the timeline comes into play. What if Hecate isn't just training Melinoë to defeat Chronos, but also trying to correct a past failure, a catastrophic event that shattered the original timeline and forced her to create a new one? The ancient Greeks believed in the power of fate, but they also believed in the possibility of changing it. Heroes like Odysseus and Heracles were known for their ability to defy the gods and forge their own destinies. Hecate, as a goddess of magic and crossroads, would certainly possess the power to manipulate fate itself. But how could she do it? How could she create a new timeline and insert Melinoë into it? To answer that question, we need to delve into the most shocking secret of all, a revelation that will completely change your understanding of the Hades universe. Because what if Melinoë isn't just a facet of Hecate, but a reincarnation? What if she is Hecate herself, reborn into a new body, given a second chance to correct the mistakes of the past? This theory might sound far-fetched, but it's supported by several clues within the game. Melinoë's unique abilities, her connection to the dead, and her unwavering determination all point to a deeper connection to Hecate than a simple student-teacher relationship. And if Melinoë is Hecate reborn, then her journey to defeat Chronos takes on a whole new meaning. It's not just about saving the underworld, it's about saving herself, about redeeming a past failure, and about finally achieving the destiny that was denied to her in the original timeline. The more you consider the evidence, the more compelling this theory becomes. It explains Hecate's emotional distance, her cryptic pronouncements, and her unwavering belief in Melinoë's potential. It's not just mentorship, it's self-guidance, a goddess teaching herself how to overcome her own limitations. But the question remains, what exactly happened in that original timeline? What was the catastrophic event that forced Hecate to create a new one? And what role did Chronos play in it all? The answers to these questions lie buried in the fragmented memories of Hecate, waiting to be pieced together. And in the next chapter, we're going to embark on a journey to reconstruct that original timeline, to uncover the secrets of Hecate's past and to understand the true stakes of Melinoë's quest. Prepare yourself, because what we discover will shatter everything you thought you knew about the world of Hades. Chapter 3. The First Timeline. Reconstructing Hecate's original life as Melinoë, her initial attempt to defeat Chronos, and the catastrophic failure that cast her outside of time. Imagine a world not unlike the one in Hades 2, but untainted. A world where the cycle of seasons flows smoothly, where the gods hold dominion without the constant threat of the Titans looming over them. A world where Melinoë existed not as a trainee, but as Hecate, the revered goddess of magic and crossroads. This was her first life, her original timeline, and it was a timeline destined for tragedy. Before she became the enigmatic mentor, before she possessed the ability to manipulate time itself, Hecate was a protector, a guardian against the encroaching darkness of Chronos. She wasn't just knowledgeable, she was powerful, deeply connected to the weave of magic that sustained the cosmos. But even power has its limits. We often see her in the crossroads, calm, collected, offering cryptic advice. But picture her then, younger, more impulsive, driven by a fierce loyalty to her family and a burning desire to shield them from harm. Imagine the weight of responsibility she carried, not just for her own fate, but for the fate of Olympus itself. Chronos, imprisoned but not defeated, still exerted his influence, a creeping poison corrupting the very fabric of reality. Hecate, with her unique insight into the workings of magic, understood the danger perhaps better than any other god. She saw the subtle shifts in the balance, the growing cracks in the foundation of their world. And she knew she had to act. But how do you fight a titan who exists outside of time, whose power transcends mortal comprehension? Hecate believed the answer lay in the source of her own magic, in the deep connection she shared with the primordial forces of the universe. She sought to amplify her abilities, to tap into a power so immense that it could shatter Chronos' influence once and for all. This quest led her down a dangerous path, a path of forbidden knowledge and forgotten rituals. She delved into the oldest texts, seeking the secrets of creation and destruction. She communed with ancient entities, beings whose very existence defied definition. You have to understand, this wasn't a casual pursuit of knowledge. This was a desperate gamble, a last-ditch effort to save everything she held dear. The pressure was immense, the stakes impossibly high, and the isolation. Imagine the isolation of knowing that the fate of the world rested on your shoulders, that failure wasn't an option. She gathered allies, of course, other gods and goddesses who recognized the gravity of the situation, but even with their support she knew that the ultimate burden fell on her. She was the key, the linchpin, the one who had to succeed. The plan was audacious, bordering on reckless. Hecate intended to confront Chronos directly, to enter his realm of distorted time and unravel his power from within. She would use her own magic as a weapon, a counterforce to his chaotic influence. But Chronos was waiting. He knew of her plans, of course. He saw her every move, anticipated her every strategy. He was, after all, a master of time, a being who existed outside the constraints of causality. The confrontation was catastrophic. A clash of unimaginable power, a battle that ripped through the very fabric of reality. Hecate fought with everything she had, unleashing the full force of her magic against the Titan. But it wasn't enough. Chronos was too strong, his influence too pervasive. He twisted her magic, turned it against her, shattered her defenses. He showed her visions of what was to come, a future of endless darkness and despair. And then he broke her. Not physically, but mentally, spiritually. He showed her the futility of her efforts, the inevitability of his victory. He stripped away her hope, her confidence, her belief in herself. In that moment of utter despair, something fractured within her. The timeline shattered, the world she knew dissolved into chaos. She was cast adrift, lost in the currents of time, a ghost of her former self. This wasn't just a defeat, it was an annihilation. The Hecate who entered that battle ceased to exist. In her place was something different, something broken, but also something more. She became an anomaly, a paradox, a being who existed outside the normal flow of time, She retained her memories, her knowledge, her powers, but they were twisted, distorted by the trauma she had endured. She saw the countless timelines, the infinite possibilities, the endless cycles of birth and death. And she understood that the only way to prevent the future Chronos had shown her was to rewrite the past. But how? How could one broken goddess, adrift in the sea of time, possibly hope to change the course of destiny? That's when she conceived of a plan so audacious, so complex, that it defied comprehension. She would manipulate fate itself, creating a new timeline, a new world, a world where Chronos could be defeated. This was the birth of the world in Hades 2, a world meticulously crafted, painstakingly engineered to achieve a specific purpose. A world built on the ashes of her first life, on the ruins of her catastrophic failure. But this new world wasn't a perfect replica of the original. It was different, subtly but significantly altered. And these differences, these deviations from the original timeline, are the key to understanding Hecate's plan. You see, she didn't just want to defeat Chronos, she wanted to ensure that he could never rise again. And to do that, she had to change something fundamental, something that went beyond mere brute force. She had to change the very nature of destiny itself. She had to learn from her mistakes, to understand why she had failed in her first life. And that meant confronting her own past, her own flaws, her own limitations. This is why she created Melinoë. Not just as a weapon against Chronos, but as a reflection of herself, a second chance to get it right. A chance to guide her younger self, to prevent her from making the same mistakes she had made. But the creation of this new timeline came at a cost that Hecate was willing to pay, but a cost that continues to ripple through the world of Hades 2, a cost that affects every character, every event, every decision. What was this cost? What sacrifices did Hecate make to create this new world, and how did these sacrifices shape the relationship between her and Melinoë? These are the questions we must explore as we delve deeper into the mysteries of Hades 2. Because understanding the origins of this world is crucial to understanding the true nature of Hecate's plan. But this discovery was only the beginning, because next we uncover how Hecate manipulated destiny itself to create the world of Hades 2, and why this new timeline differs so drastically from the original Hades. Chapter 4. Threads of Fate. Rewoven. Analyzing how Hecate manipulated destiny itself to create the world of Hades 2, and why this new timeline differs from the original Hades. Imagine Hecate not just as a goddess of magic, but as a master weaver, carefully manipulating the threads of fate itself. The world of, you see, isn't simply a continuation of Zagreus' story, it's a meticulously crafted alternative reality, born from Hecate's own designs. A second chance perhaps for a past she couldn't bear to repeat. But how could she possibly rewrite history on such a grand scale? The answer lies in her mastery of magic, yes, but more importantly, in her understanding of the fundamental laws that govern the cosmos within the universe. Remember, the Olympians themselves are bound by fate. Even Chronos, in his tyrannical reign, followed a preordained path. Hecate, however, found a loophole. Or rather, she won. To understand the magnitude of her actions, we need to consider the implications of time travel and alternate timelines. In many fictional universes, altering the past creates paradoxes, branching realities where anything is possible, but seems to operate on a slightly different principle, a principle of, think of it like this. Instead of creating a separate branch, Hecate is subtly altering the existing trunk of the tree of time. She's not erasing the original timeline of, but she's layering a new reality over it, one that subtly shifts the course of events, pushing them towards a different conclusion. The question isn't she changed the past, but she did it, and what the consequences of those changes truly are. The key, I believe, lies in her connection to Melinoë. Melinoë, as we've discussed, is more than just a student. She is, in a sense, the anchor point for this new timeline. Hecate isn't just teaching her magic, she's imbuing her with the power to shape reality itself. She is, in a way, Hecate's instrument for rewriting fate. Consider the very nature of Melinoë's quest. She is tasked with defeating Chronos, a feat that Zagreus never attempted. Why this difference? Why now? The answer, I believe, is that Hecate has identified a critical flaw in the original timeline, a point where Chronos' victory could have been prevented. And Melinoë is the key to exploiting that weakness. But what exactly the original timeline? What cataclysmic event pushed Hecate to take such drastic action? To answer this, we must delve into the shadows of her past, a past that is hinted at through cryptic dialogue and subtle visual cues within the game itself. It is a past she wishes to forget, but a past that ultimately defines her actions in... Let's consider the differences between the world Zagreus inhabited and the one Melinoë now fights to protect. The most obvious difference, of course, is the presence of Chronos. In, the Titan was imprisoned, his influence limited. But in, he has escaped, plunging the underworld into chaos. But the changes go deeper than that. The very atmosphere of the underworld feels different, more oppressive, more desperate. The characters we know and love are altered, their personalities subtly shifted by the weight of Chronos' looming threat. Even the gameplay mechanics reflect this change, with new challenges and enemies that Zagreus never faced. These aren't random alterations. They are deliberate choices, carefully orchestrated by Hecate to create a new set of circumstances, a new playing field where Melinoë has a chance to succeed, where Hecate herself failed. But what was that failure? What specific event triggered this desperate attempt to rewrite history? We can find clues in Hecate's dialogue, in her veiled warnings and cryptic pronouncements. She speaks of a dark future, of a world consumed by shadow. She hints at a catastrophic event that shattered the balance of the cosmos, an event that she is determined to prevent at all costs. Could this event be the complete and utter triumph of Chronos? A scenario where he not only escapes his imprisonment but also conquers Olympus, plunging the world into an eternal age of darkness? It's a terrifying possibility, one that would explain Hecate's desperate measures. But if that's the case, why didn't she intervene sooner? Why wait until Chronos had already escaped before setting her plan in motion? The answer, I suspect, lies in the nature of fate itself. Hecate may be powerful, but she is not omnipotent. She cannot simply erase the past and create a perfect future. She can only nudge events in a different direction, subtly altering the course of history. Perhaps Chronos' escape was an unavoidable event, a necessary catalyst for the changes that Hecate needed to implement. Perhaps she needed to wait for the right moment, for the precise alignment of celestial events before she could unleash her plan. Whatever the reason, it's clear that Hecate's actions are driven by a deep sense of urgency, a desperate desire to avert a looming catastrophe. And Melinoë is the key to her plan, the chosen one who will either save the world or doom it to an eternity of darkness. But how exactly did Hecate manipulate fate? What specific rituals or spells did she use to alter the course of history? While the game doesn't explicitly spell it out, we can glean some clues from the lore and mythology surrounding Hecate herself. Hecate is often associated with crossroads, liminal spaces where different paths converge. These crossroads, in a metaphorical sense, represent points of decision, moments where the future can be altered. It's possible that Hecate used her control over these liminal spaces to subtly influence the choices made by key individuals, nudging them towards a different outcome. She might have also used her mastery of magic to manipulate the threads of fate itself, weaving new possibilities into the fabric of reality. Imagine her, standing at the center of a cosmic loom, carefully pulling and twisting the threads of destiny, creating a new tapestry of events. This is, of course, speculation. But it's speculation based on the clues that the game provides, on the rich tapestry of lore and mythology that underpins the world of. And it's speculation that leads us to a deeper understanding of Hecate's character, of her motivations, and of the sacrifices she is willing to make to save the world. But the most intriguing aspect of Hecate's manipulation of fate is the fact that she doesn't seem to be aiming for a perfect outcome. She's not trying to create a utopia where Chronos is forever imprisoned and everyone lives happily ever after. Instead, she seems to be aiming for something more nuanced, something more realistic. She understands that even the best-laid plans can go awry, that even the most powerful magic cannot guarantee a perfect outcome. She is, in essence, preparing Melinoë for a world where failure is inevitable, where setbacks are commonplace, and where the only thing that truly matters is the willingness to keep fighting, to keep learning, to keep growing. This is why her training methods are so rigorous, so demanding. She's not just teaching Melinoë how to wield magic. She's teaching her how to endure hardship, how to overcome adversity, how to rise from the ashes of defeat. She is, in a sense, forging Melinoë into a weapon capable of facing any challenge, no matter how daunting. And that's what makes Hecate such a compelling character. She's not a flawless hero, not a benevolent goddess who swoops in to save the day. She's a complex, flawed individual who has made mistakes in the past, who has suffered loss and heartbreak, but who is determined to learn from her experiences and to create a better future. The world of is her canvas, Melinoë is her brush, and the fate of the cosmos is the masterpiece she is trying to create. But will she succeed? Will Melinoë be able to defeat Chronos and avert the looming catastrophe? Only time will tell. However, even if Melinoë succeeds, the question remains, what will be the cost? What sacrifices will have to be made to ensure the survival of the underworld? And what will become of the original timeline, the timeline where Zagreus fought his way out of the underworld, the timeline that we all know and love? These are the questions that haunt Hecate, the questions that drive her to manipulate fate, to rewrite history. And they are the questions that we, as players, must grapple with as we delve deeper into the world of. We've established that Hecate altered the timeline to create the world of. We've explored her motivations, her methods, and the potential consequences of her actions. But what if I told you that there's another, even more profound difference between the two timelines? A difference that goes beyond the presence of Chronos and the altered personalities of the characters. What if the very of the underworld itself has been changed? What if Hecate has not only manipulated fate, but also reshaped the fundamental laws that govern the realm of the dead? To understand this possibility, we need to examine the mythological foundations that underpin the world of, and that's exactly what we'll uncover in the next chapter. Chapter 5. The Psychology of Self-Mentorship. Exploring the emotional complexity of literally becoming your own teacher, the paradoxes of self-love and self-criticism across time. The implications of Hecate mentoring her younger self, Melinoë, are far more complex than a simple tutorial. We're not just talking about imparting knowledge, but navigating the treacherous waters of self-perception, regret, and the ever-present temptation to rewrite one's own history. Imagine the inherent paradox, teaching yourself what you have done, while simultaneously knowing the reasons why you didn't. It's a cosmic therapy session, but with the fate of the world hanging in the balance. Hecate's emotional distance, so often interpreted as coldness, might actually be a necessary defense mechanism. How else could she bear to witness her past mistakes relived, knowing the pain and devastation that awaits Melinoë? It's a form of self-inflicted emotional labor, a constant balancing act between guidance and agonizing remembrance. Think about it. Every correction she offers, every strategy she suggests, is a reflection on her own past failures. She's not just teaching Melinoë, she's critiquing herself, judging her own decisions with the benefit of hindsight. The weight of that burden is almost unimaginable. And what about the potential for self-sabotage? Could Hecate, consciously or unconsciously, be hindering Melinoë's progress to avoid confronting the full extent of her own past? It's a dark possibility, but one that resonates with the complexities of the human psyche. We are, after all, often our own worst enemies. The concept of self-love also takes on a twisted form in this scenario. Is Hecate genuinely trying to help Melinoë succeed? Or is she simply trying to create a version of herself that she can finally be proud of? Is it altruism or a desperate attempt at self-redemption? The line blurs, creating a moral ambiguity that makes Hecate such a fascinating and compelling character. Consider the moments when Hecate seems particularly harsh or demanding. Are these instances of tough love, designed to prepare Melinoë for the challenges ahead? Or are they projections of Hecate's own insecurities and self-doubt, a way of punishing her younger self for perceived inadequacies? The answer, I suspect, lies somewhere in between. The dynamic is further complicated by the fact that Melinoë is not simply a blank slate. She has her own personality, her own motivations, and her own ideas about how to defeat Chronos. This creates a natural tension between student and teacher, a clash of wills that is amplified by the fact that they are, essentially, the same person. It's like having a constant internal debate, with one part of your mind trying to guide the other, while the other stubbornly resists. The potential for conflict is immense, and the emotional toll must be staggering. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of this self-mentorship is the potential for growth. By confronting her past mistakes and guiding her younger self towards a better future, Hecate has the opportunity to heal old wounds and finally find peace. It's a long and arduous journey, but one that is ultimately worth undertaking. The game cleverly uses gameplay mechanics to emphasize this internal struggle. Think about the different boons and abilities you unlock as Melinoë progresses. Are these simply tools to defeat Chronos, or are they symbolic representations of Hecate's own personal growth and development? Each new skill learned, each obstacle overcome, represents a step forward on the path to self-acceptance. It's a powerful metaphor for the transformative potential of self-reflection and the importance of learning from our mistakes. You see, Hecate isn't just teaching Melinoë how to fight, she's teaching her how to forgive herself. And in doing so, she's also learning to forgive herself. It's a beautiful and poignant illustration of the power of self-compassion. The paradoxes of self-mentorship extend beyond the emotional realm and into the very fabric of time itself. Hecate possesses knowledge that Melinoë does not, knowledge of future events and the consequences of past actions. This creates a unique power dynamic, one that is fraught with ethical dilemmas. How much should Hecate reveal to Melinoë? Should she warn her about every danger, every setback, every potential failure? Or should she allow her to make her own mistakes, to learn from her own experiences, even if those experiences are painful? The answer, of course, is not simple. Too much information could overwhelm Melinoë, paralyzing her with fear and doubt. Too little information could leave her unprepared, vulnerable to the dangers that lie ahead. Hecate must strike a delicate balance, providing guidance without stifling Melinoë's own agency. This is where the concept of free will comes into play. If Hecate knows the future, does Melinoë truly have the ability to change it? Is she simply a puppet, acting out a preordained script? Or does she have the power to forge her own destiny, to create a different outcome than the one Hecate has foreseen? The game doesn't offer easy answers to these questions. It leaves it up to the player to decide, to interpret the events as they unfold and to draw their own conclusions about the nature of fate and free will. But one thing is clear, Hecate's foreknowledge is not a guarantee of success. It is simply a tool, one that can be used for good or for ill. It is up to her, and to Melinoë, to decide how to wield that tool responsibly. The weight of this responsibility is immense. Hecate knows the stakes, she knows the consequences of failure, and she knows that the fate of the world rests on her shoulders. This knowledge can be both a blessing and a curse, a source of motivation and a source of crippling anxiety. It's like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces, knowing that the fate of the world depends on your ability to complete it. The pressure is unimaginable. But Hecate doesn't crumble under the pressure. She draws strength from her past mistakes, from her determination to create a better future, and from her unwavering belief in Melinoë's potential. She is a mentor, a teacher, and a guide, but she is also a survivor. And it's this resilience, this ability to overcome adversity, that makes her such a compelling and inspiring character. She is a testament to the power of the human spirit, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. This brings us to the question of self-criticism. How does Hecate balance the need to correct Melinoë's mistakes with the need to encourage her and build her confidence? How does she avoid becoming overly critical, pushing Melinoë too hard and potentially damaging her self-esteem? The answer, I believe, lies in the concept of constructive criticism. Hecate doesn't simply point out Melinoë's flaws, she offers specific suggestions for improvement. She doesn't tear her down, she builds her up. She understands that mistakes are inevitable, that they are a necessary part of the learning process. She doesn't punish Melinoë for making them, she uses them as opportunities to teach and to guide. This is a crucial distinction, one that separates a good mentor from a bad one. A good mentor focuses on the positive, highlighting the student's strengths and encouraging them to build on those strengths. A bad mentor focuses on the negative, dwelling on the student's weaknesses and undermining their confidence. Hecate, for the most part, falls into the former category. She is a demanding teacher. but she is also a supportive one. She pushes Melinoë to her limits, but she also provides her with the tools and the encouragement she needs to succeed. And it's this combination of rigor and compassion that makes her such an effective mentor. She understands that true growth comes from pushing oneself beyond one's comfort zone. But she also knows that it's important to have someone there to offer support and guidance along the way. The game cleverly illustrates this dynamic through the various interactions between Hecate and Melinoë. Think about the moments when Hecate offers words of encouragement, when she praises Melinoë's progress, when she expresses her belief in her abilities. These moments are not just throwaway lines of dialogue, they are essential to the overall narrative. They remind us that even in the midst of chaos and destruction, there is always room for hope and for kindness. And it's this message of hope and kindness that ultimately resonates with us the most. In Hecate, a reflection of our own potential for growth, for self-acceptance, and for love. In Melinoë, a reflection of our own struggles, our own doubts, and our own fears. And we realize that even though we may not be able to change the past, we can always learn from it and create a better future for ourselves. The psychology of self-mentorship is a complex and multifaceted topic, one that is explored with remarkable depth and nuance in Hades 2. It's a story about the power of self-reflection, the importance of self-compassion, and the transformative potential of learning from our mistakes. But this is only one piece of the puzzle. To truly understand the relationship between Hecate and Melinoë, we need to delve deeper into the specific moments in their training that reveal the true nature of their bond. What are the specific lessons that Hecate is trying to impart, and what do those lessons tell us about her own personal journey? That's what we'll uncover next, as we examine the lessons written in Loss. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover the story. Chapter 6. Lessons Written in Loss. Examining specific moments in Hecate's training of Melinoë that take on new meaning when understood as acts of self-guidance and protection. Hecate's lessons often felt cryptic, more like veiled warnings than straightforward instruction. But what if those cryptic lessons weren't just for Melinoë, the fledgling witch finding her feet? What if they were Hecate's way of guiding herself, a younger, more vulnerable version, through the gauntlet of fate she already knew awaited? Think about the training grounds, the relentless drills, the endless repetition of spells and incantations. Melinoë likely saw it as preparation for the battles ahead, a necessary grind to hone her skills. But Hecate? She had already fought those battles. She knew precisely where Melinoë would stumble. The repetitive training wasn't just about building muscle memory, it was about etching survival into the very fabric of her being. Each parry, each dodge, each perfectly timed spell was a correction, a whispered reminder to a younger self teetering on the precipice of disaster. Remember this, Hecate seemed to be saying, not just to Melinoë, but to the echo of her past. This is how you survive. Consider the early stages of weapon training. Melinoë, eager to prove herself, probably rushed in, relying on raw power and instinct. Hecate, however, consistently emphasized precision, control, and calculated movements. At the time, it might have seemed like a frustrating exercise in restraint. But now, knowing Hecate's true nature, it reads as a desperate attempt to prevent a past mistake. A moment where impetuousness led to catastrophic failure. She wasn't just teaching Melinoë how to fight. She was teaching herself to temper her own youthful recklessness. She was rewriting a crucial moment in her personal history, guiding her younger self away from a fatal misstep. The weight of that foreknowledge must have been immense, a constant pressure shaping every interaction. And what about the constant emphasis on strategy and planning? Hecate wasn't just preparing Melinoë for individual battles, she was preparing her for a war she had already lost. The countless hours spent poring over maps, analyzing enemy movements, and formulating contingency plans, these weren't just academic exercises. They were a desperate attempt to avoid the strategic blunders that led to her original defeat. Imagine the frustration Hecate must have felt, knowing the exact pitfalls that lay ahead, yet forced to guide Melinoë indirectly, through cryptic pronouncements and veiled warnings. She couldn't simply tell her younger self what to do. That would risk fracturing the timeline, creating paradoxes that could unravel reality itself. So she had to rely on the language of mentorship, couching her warnings in terms that Melinoë could understand, while simultaneously reminding herself of the lessons she had learned the hard way. Every piece of advice, every correction, every strategic suggestion was a lifeline thrown back through time, a desperate attempt to alter the course of history. Take, for example, Hecate's insistence on understanding the enemy. She didn't just want Melinoë to know to fight Chronos' forces, she wanted her to understand they fought. What motivated them? What were their weaknesses? This wasn't just tactical advice, it was a profound lesson in empathy, a recognition that even the most formidable enemy is still driven by human desires and fears. Perhaps, in her original timeline, Hecate had underestimated her opponents. Perhaps she had seen them as nothing more than monstrous obstacles, failing to recognize the complexities of their motivations. Now, she was determined to correct that mistake, to instill in Melinoë, and therefore herself, a deeper understanding of the forces arrayed against them. And consider the moments when Hecate seemed particularly harsh, her criticisms bordering on cruel. Were these simply the frustrations of a demanding mentor, or were they something more? Were they a reflection of Hecate's own self-loathing, a projection of her past failures onto the student standing before her? It's easy to imagine Hecate, haunted by the memory of her past mistakes, seeing those same flaws reflected in Melinoë's actions. The impatience, the recklessness, the tendency to underestimate the enemy, all of these would have been painful reminders of her own shortcomings. And perhaps, in those moments of harsh criticism, she was not just correcting Melinoë, but punishing herself. The training wasn't just about physical and magical prowess, it was about emotional resilience. Hecate knew that the battles ahead would be brutal, that Melinoë would face setbacks and losses that would test her to her very core, and she wanted to prepare her for those moments, to instill in her the strength to persevere, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. This explains the almost ritualistic nature of some training exercises. Melinoë would face simulations designed to push her to her absolute limit, often resulting in apparent failure. Then, Hecate would dissect that failure with ruthless precision, forcing Melinoë to confront her weaknesses and learn from her mistakes. These weren't just lessons in combat, they were lessons in resilience, in the ability to pick yourself up after a fall and keep fighting. They were a deliberate attempt to inoculate Melinoë against the despair that had consumed Hecate in her previous life, a preventative measure against the kind of grief that can shatter a soul. Think of the times. Hecate emphasized the importance of self-reliance. She encouraged Melinoë to trust her instincts, to make her own decisions, to not rely solely on her guidance. At first glance, this might seem counterintuitive. Why would a mentor deliberately push her student away? But consider the alternative. If Melinoë became too dependent on Hecate, she would be vulnerable when her mentor was no longer around. And Hecate knew with chilling certainty that there would come a time when she would not be able to protect Melinoë. She was preparing her for a future she herself wouldn't be a part of. This also casts a new light on Hecate's insistence on Melinoë exploring different weapon combinations and magic affinities. It wasn't just about finding what worked best for her, it was about cultivating adaptability. Hecate knew that the challenges ahead would be unpredictable, that Melinoë would need to be able to adapt to any situation, to improvise and innovate on the fly. In her original timeline, perhaps Hecate had become too rigid, too reliant on a specific set of strategies and tactics. Now, she was determined to avoid that mistake, to instill in Melinoë a flexibility of mind that would allow her to overcome any obstacle. A mind capable of bending, but never breaking. And what about the times when Hecate withheld information, deliberately keeping Melinoë in the dark? It might have seemed like a power play, a way to maintain control. But perhaps it was something more benevolent. Perhaps Hecate was trying to protect Melinoë from the burden of foreknowledge. She knew the horrors that awaited, the sacrifices that would be required, the losses that would be endured. And perhaps she didn't want to burden Melinoë with that knowledge, to rob her of her innocence and optimism. She wanted her to face the future with courage and hope, not with fear and despair. It's a cruel irony, isn't it? Hecate, burdened with the weight of her past, trying to shield her younger self from the very knowledge that could save her. But perhaps she understood that some burdens are too heavy to bear, that some truths are best discovered in their own time. Consider the moments when Hecate would simply observe Melinoë, offering no guidance or correction, allowing her to struggle and even fail. These moments might have seemed like tests of endurance, a way to gauge Melinoë's resolve. But perhaps they were something more personal. Perhaps Hecate was simply watching herself, reliving those pivotal moments in her past, wondering if there was anything she could have done differently. Perhaps she was searching for clues, for insights that could help her understand her own failures, a chance to rewrite her own history, even if only in her mind. And what about the times when Hecate would share fragments of her own past, veiled stories and cryptic anecdotes that hinted at her own struggles and triumphs? These weren't just historical lessons, they were personal confessions, a way for Hecate to connect with her younger self, to offer a glimpse into the future that awaited. Each story, each anecdote, was a carefully chosen lesson, a piece of advice disguised as a memory. She was sharing her wisdom, her experiences, her mistakes, all in the hope of guiding Melinoë, and therefore herself, towards a better future. A future where the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. Think about the seemingly random acts of kindness, the small gestures of support and encouragement that Hecate would occasionally offer. A reassuring word, a gentle touch, a moment of shared laughter. These moments might have seemed insignificant, but they were crucial. They were a reminder that even in the midst of relentless training and daunting challenges, there was still room for compassion, for empathy, for human connection. They were a way for Hecate to show Melinoë and herself that she was not alone, that she was loved and supported even in the darkest of times. And consider the moments when Hecate would express pride in Melinoë's accomplishments, her voice filled with genuine warmth and admiration. These weren't just empty platitudes, they were heartfelt expressions of love and acceptance. They were a way for Hecate to acknowledge the progress that Melinoë had made, to celebrate her victories, to reinforce her confidence. And perhaps they were also a way for Hecate to forgive herself, to acknowledge the strengths and virtues that she had always possessed, even in the face of her failures. The training wasn't just about defeating Chronos. It was about healing old wounds, about forgiving past mistakes, about learning to love and accept oneself, flaws and all. It was a journey of self-discovery, a quest for redemption, a testament to the enduring power of hope. But what happens when the lessons of the past collide with the realities of the present? When Hecate's foreknowledge clashes with Melinoë's free will? What happens when the student refuses to heed the teacher's warnings, choosing instead to forge her own path? These are the questions we must confront as we move forward, because next we will uncover the stark differences between the original Hades timeline and the one Hecate is desperately trying to create. Chapter 7. The road-like as metaphor. Connecting the mechanical structure of repeated attempts to the thematic content of rewriting fate and learning from failure. Have you ever stopped to consider how the very structure of a video game can echo its deepest themes? Not just in the story it tells, but in the way it? Because in Hades 2, the roguelike genre isn't just a gameplay mechanic, it's a mirror reflecting the core narrative of rewriting fate and learning from failure. Think about it. What is a roguelike at its heart? It's a cycle, a loop of repeated attempts, each ending in failure, but each offering a chance to learn, to adapt, to grow stronger. You venture into the depths, you fight, you fall, and then you begin again. Sound familiar? Melinoë's quest to defeat Chronos is, in essence, a roguelike run. She faces insurmountable odds, she makes mistakes, she dies countless times. But each time she returns to the crossroads, she brings back something: knowledge. Knowledge of enemy attack patterns, knowledge of boon synergies, knowledge of her own strengths and weaknesses. This isn't just a convenient way to structure a challenging game, it's a deliberate choice that reinforces the central theme of the story, that failure isn't final. It's a stepping stone, it's an opportunity. It's a necessary part of the process of growth and change. Consider the boons, the blessings offered by the Olympian gods. Each run, you're presented with a different selection, forcing you to adapt your strategy, to experiment with new combinations. You might favor Aphrodite's weakening effects one run, then embrace Zeus's lightning strikes the next. This constant adaptation mirrors Melinoë's own journey of self-discovery, her willingness to try new approaches, to embrace different aspects of her own power. And what about the weapons? The nocturnal arms, each with its own unique style and abilities. The sister blades, the moonstone axe, the argent skull. Each weapon represents a different path, a different way to approach the challenge. Mastering each weapon requires time, patience, and a willingness to learn from your mistakes. It's a process of understanding not just the weapon itself, but also how it fits into your own personal playstyle, your own strengths and weaknesses. But the true brilliance of the roguelike structure in Hades 2 lies in its ability to create a sense of progression even in failure. You may not reach Chronos on every run, but you're always making progress. You're unlocking new upgrades at the crossroads, deepening your relationships with the other characters, and uncovering new fragments of the story. Each run, win or lose, contributes to Melinoë's overall growth, both in terms of her power and her understanding of the world around her. The game subtly reinforces the idea that even small victories, even incremental improvements, are valuable in the long run. It's a powerful message, especially in a world that often emphasizes instant gratification and immediate success. Think about the minor prophecies, the tasks given to you by the fates. They seem simple at first. Defeat a certain number of enemies with a specific weapon, use a particular boon a certain number of times. But they subtly guide you towards experimentation, towards trying new things, towards stepping outside of your comfort zone. They encourage you to embrace the roguelike cycle, to see each run as an opportunity to learn and grow. The game doesn't punish you for failure, it embraces it, it celebrates it. It understands that failure is an inevitable part of the learning process, and it provides you with the tools and the support you need to keep trying, to keep learning, to keep growing. But what if this cycle of repeated attempts isn't just a reflection of Melinoë's journey, but also a reflection of Hecate's? What if Hecate, in her role as mentor, is guiding Melinoë through a process that she herself has experienced countless times? Consider Hecate's calm demeanor, her unwavering patience. She never seems frustrated by Melinoë's failures. She never doubts her potential. Instead, she offers guidance, support, and encouragement. She knows that the path to victory is long and arduous, and that failure is an inevitable part of the journey. Perhaps Hecate has seen countless versions of this story play out, countless timelines where Melinoë has failed to defeat Chronos. Perhaps she's learned from each of those failures, and she's using that knowledge to guide Melinoë towards a different outcome. This raises a fascinating question. Is Hecate simply a mentor, or is she something more? Is she a time traveler, a manipulator of fate, a guardian of the timeline? And if so, what are her true motives? The roguelike structure of Hades 2 allows us to experience Melinoë's journey in a way that perfectly mirrors the thematic content of the story. It's a game about learning from failure, about adapting to change, about embracing the power of repetition, and it's a game that subtly hints at a deeper, more complex story. A story that involves time travel, fate manipulation, and the enigmatic figure of Hecate. But the genius of Hades 2 goes even further. It's not just about rewriting fate in a grand cosmic sense, but also about rewriting personal narratives, about challenging ingrained patterns of behavior, and about confronting the limitations we place on ourselves. Think about the characters you meet in the underworld. Each of them is trapped in their own cycle of suffering, their own personal roguelike run. Odysseus, haunted by his past, unable to find peace. Narcissus, consumed by his own reflection, unable to see the beauty in the world around him. Each of these characters represents a different aspect of the human condition, a different way in which we can become trapped by our own limitations. Melinoë's interactions with these characters offer a glimpse of hope, a suggestion that even the most deeply ingrained patterns can be broken. By offering them kindness, compassion, and understanding, she can help them to see themselves in a new light, to break free from their cycles of suffering. This is where the roguelike structure of Hades 2 truly shines. It allows us to experience these interactions repeatedly, to experiment with different approaches, to see how our actions can impact the lives of others. It's a powerful reminder that even small acts of kindness can have a ripple effect, that even the smallest changes can lead to profound transformations. The game encourages us to engage with these characters on a personal level, to learn their stories, to understand their motivations, and in doing so, it challenges us to confront our own biases, our own assumptions about the world. But the roguelike structure also serves a more practical purpose. It allows us to learn the attack patterns of our enemies, to master the nuances of each weapon, to discover the most effective boon combinations. It's a system that rewards experimentation, that encourages us to step outside of our comfort zone, and that ultimately makes us better players. And this, in turn, reinforces the thematic content of the story. Melinoë's journey is not just about defeating Chronos, it's about becoming the best version of herself. It's about mastering her own powers, about understanding her own limitations, and about embracing her own potential. The game subtly suggests that the skills we develop in the underworld can also be applied to our own lives. The ability to learn from failure, to adapt to change, to persevere in the face of adversity. These are all qualities that can help us to navigate the challenges of the real world. The roguelike structure of Hades 2 is a powerful metaphor for the human experience. It's a reminder that life is full of challenges, that failure is inevitable, and that the only way to succeed is to keep learning, to keep growing, and to never give up. But there's another layer to this metaphor, one that speaks to the very nature of storytelling itself. Think about the way that myths and legends are passed down through generations. They're not static, unchanging narratives. They're constantly being retold, reinterpreted, and adapted to fit the needs of each new audience. In a way, each playthrough of Hades 2 is like a new retelling of the same myth. We're exploring the same themes, the same characters, the same conflicts, but each time we do so, we bring our own unique perspective, our own unique experiences to bear. The game allows us to create our own personal narratives within the framework of the larger story. We can choose to focus on different aspects of the story, to develop different relationships with the characters, to pursue different goals, and this, in turn, enriches the overall experience. It makes the story feel more personal, more meaningful, and more relevant to our own lives. The roguelike structure of Hades 2 is not just a gameplay mechanic, it's a storytelling device. It's a way of inviting us to participate in the creation of the story, to become active participants in the myth-making process. But what if the repeated runs, the constant cycle of death and rebirth aren't just a metaphor for Melinoë's journey or the nature of storytelling? What if they're a literal representation of Hecate's attempts to manipulate time and fate? What if Hecate isn't just guiding Melinoë through a series of trials, but is actually experimenting with different timelines, different versions of reality, in an attempt to find the one path that leads to victory? This would explain Hecate's vast knowledge, her seemingly endless patience, and her unwavering belief in Melinoë's potential. She's seen countless versions of the story play out, and she knows what it takes to succeed. But it also raises some troubling questions. If Hecate is manipulating time and fate, then what are the consequences of her actions? Is she sacrificing other timelines, other versions of Melinoë, in order to achieve her goals? And what does this mean for Melinoë's free will? Is she truly in control of her own destiny, or is she simply a pawn in Hecate's grand scheme? The roguelike structure of Hades 2 invites us to consider these questions, to grapple with the complexities of time travel, fate manipulation, and the ethics of intervention. It's a game that challenges us to think critically about the choices we make and the consequences of those choices. But perhaps the most important lesson of Hades 2 is that even in the face of overwhelming odds, even when we feel like we're trapped in a cycle of failure, we always have the power to learn, to grow, and to change. The game reminds us that even the smallest acts of kindness, even the smallest changes in our behavior, can have a profound impact on the world around us. And it encourages us to embrace the power of repetition, to see each new day as an opportunity to learn from our mistakes and to become the best versions of ourselves. The roguelike structure of Hades 2 is not just a game mechanic, it's a philosophy of life. It's a reminder that failure is not final, that hope is always possible, and that the journey is just as important as the destination. But what if Zagreus, the protagonist of the first Hades game, holds the key to understanding why Melinoë's path is so difficult, why she needs to repeat her attempts over and over? What if his success reveals a fundamental truth about the nature of conflict itself? We'll explore that in the next chapter as we delve into the philosophical differences between Zagreus and Melinoë and how those differences ultimately shape their destinies. Chapter 8. Two Paths to Peace, analysing why Melinoë cannot defeat Chronos alone and how Zagreus represents a different philosophical approach to conflict. Resolution. The truth is, if Melinoë simply brute forced her way to victory, the story would be, well, significantly less interesting. Think about it. If raw power was the only answer, what would be the point of all that careful training? All those cryptic pronouncements from Hecate? The meticulously planned rituals? No, something deeper is at play here. Something that touches on the very nature of conflict and the different ways we can approach seemingly insurmountable obstacles. We've seen Melinoë's relentless drive, her unwavering commitment to vengeance. But is that enough? Is that enough? The game subtly, but insistently, suggests that it isn't. Melinoë, as we've seen, embodies a very specific kind of determination, a burning desire to right a wrong, to avenge a perceived injustice. This is a powerful motivator, no doubt, but it's also limited. It blinds her, focuses her attention solely on the target of her wrath. It's a straight line, a direct assault. And Chronos, as a being who exists outside of time itself, is anything a straightforward opponent. He is, in essence, the ultimate immovable object. Think about the very mechanics of the game. Each run, each attempt to reach Chronos is a gauntlet of enemies, traps, and challenges designed to test Melinoë's strength and skill. But even with the most powerful boons, the most finely honed strategy, she will fall short. Time and time again, she will be forced to confront her own limitations. This isn't just a gameplay mechanic, it's a fundamental part of the narrative. It's telling us something. That something is that Melinoë's approach, while admirable, is inherently flawed. It relies too heavily on force, on the belief that enough power, enough skill, can overcome any obstacle. But Chronos isn't just any obstacle. He's a force of nature, an embodiment of entropy, of the inevitable decay that consumes all things. He cannot be simply. So, what's the alternative? What other path is there to peace, to resolution? To answer that, we need to look at another figure, one who is conspicuously absent from the events of Hades. Zagreus. Yes, Zagreus. The protagonist of the first game, the prince of the underworld who defied his father and repeatedly escaped to the surface. Now, on the surface, Zagreus and Melinoë seem to share a similar motivation, a desire to escape, to break free from the constraints of their respective roles. But look closer, and you'll see a crucial difference in their approach. Zagreus wasn't driven by vengeance. He wasn't consumed by a burning desire to punish someone or right a wrong. His motivation was, at its core, much simpler. He wanted to understand. He wanted to know why his mother had left, why his father was so distant and unyielding. His journey wasn't about, it was about. And that, I believe, is the key. Zagreus represents a different philosophical approach to conflict resolution, one that emphasizes understanding, empathy, and the forging of relationships. He didn't try to brute force his way to the surface. He sought help, formed alliances, and learned from those around him. He listened to their stories, understood their motivations, and found common ground. His way to freedom. Think about the gods of Olympus, who were initially hostile to Zagreus's repeated escapes. Over time, as Zagreus persisted, as he showed genuine curiosity and a willingness to learn, their attitude began to shift. They offered him boons, advice, and eventually even a grudging respect. They recognized something in him that they didn't see in Hades, a willingness to connect, to understand, to bridge the gap between opposing viewpoints. Now, consider Melinoë's interactions with the gods. While they offer her boons, just as they did Zagreus, the tone is different. There's a sense of distance, of formality. They see her as a weapon, a tool to be used against Chronos. They don't seem to recognize, or perhaps even care about, her personal struggles, her doubts, her fears. They are invested in her. not in her. This is because Melinoë, in her single-minded pursuit of vengeance, has inadvertently closed herself off to the very connections that could help her achieve her goal. She sees the world in terms of enemies and allies, obstacles to be overcome. She doesn't take the time to understand the motivations of those around her, to forge genuine relationships based on mutual respect and understanding. She is fighting alone, even when she is surrounded by allies. And that, ultimately, is why she cannot defeat Chronos on her own. She lacks the perspective, the empathy, the ability to see beyond the immediate conflict. She is trapped in a cycle of violence, doomed to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. But what does this mean for the future? Does it mean Melinoë is destined to fail? Is there no hope for her to achieve her goals? Not necessarily. The game subtly hints that there may be another way, a path that combines Melinoë's strength and determination with Zagreus's empathy and understanding. Perhaps the key lies in learning from the past, in recognizing the limitations of her current approach, and in opening herself up to new possibilities. Perhaps the answer isn't to defeat Chronos through force, but to find a way to him. I know, it sounds crazy, right? To understand the Titan who threatens to unravel the very fabric of time itself. But what if that's exactly what's needed? What if Chronos isn't just a monster to be vanquished, but a force of nature to be reckoned with, a consequence of a deeper imbalance in the cosmos? Think back to the ancient myths, to the stories of the Titans and the gods. It wasn't always a simple matter of good versus evil. There were complex alliances, betrayals, and shifting loyalties. The Titans weren't inherently evil, they were simply different. They represented a different order, a different way of understanding the world. Perhaps the key to defeating Chronos lies not in destroying him, but in finding a way to reconcile these opposing forces, to create a new balance that can accommodate both the old and the new. Perhaps Melinoë's true purpose isn't to avenge the past, but to forge a new future. But how could she possibly do that? How could she, consumed by vengeance, possibly find a way to empathize with the being who has caused her so much pain? The answer, I suspect, lies in understanding the true nature of her own power, in recognizing that her strength isn't just in her ability to fight, but in her capacity to know is, after all, a chthonic deity, a being of the underworld connected to the very essence of death and rebirth. She understands the cycles of life and death, the ebb and flow of time. She has the potential to see beyond the immediate conflict, to recognize the deeper patterns at play. But to do that, she needs to let go of her anger, her resentment, her need for vengeance. She needs to open herself up to new perspectives, to new possibilities. She needs to learn from Zagreus's example, to embrace empathy and understanding as tools of war. And that, my friends, is a journey that is just beginning. A journey that will require her to confront her own demons, to challenge her own beliefs, and to ultimately redefine her understanding of what it means to be a hero. A journey that will push her to the very limits of her power, and perhaps even beyond. But this journey isn't just Melinoë's, it's ours as well. As players, as observers, we are invited to reflect on our own approaches to conflict, to consider the limitations of violence, and to explore the possibilities of empathy and understanding. We are challenged to see beyond the immediate conflict, to recognize the deeper patterns at play, and to find new ways to create peace and harmony in our own lives. And that, I believe, is the true genius of Hades 2. It's not just a game about killing monsters, it's a game about exploring the complexities of human nature, the challenges of conflict resolution, and the power of empathy and understanding. It's a game that invites us to become better versions of ourselves, both in the game and in the real world. But even with this newfound understanding, even with the potential for a different path, one crucial question remains. How can Melinoë possibly learn to embrace empathy when she is constantly being pushed to fight, to kill, to avenge? How can she find the space to connect with others when she is constantly battling for her survival? The answer, I believe, lies in understanding the true nature of her mentor, Hecate, and the hidden depths of her seemingly cryptic teachings. Because, as we'll discover in the next chapter, Hecate isn't just a teacher, she's a mirror, reflecting back to Melinoë the very qualities she needs to cultivate in herself. And the lessons she imparts are not just about magic and combat, they are about the psychology of self-mentorship, the emotional complexity of guiding your younger self towards a better future. Chapter 9. The Weight of Knowing. Exploring how Hecate's foreknowledge of coming challenges affects her relationship with Melinoë and her approach to preparation. Think about it. Hecate isn't just teaching Melinoë how to fight Chronos. She already how that fight goes. She's seen it, lived it, failed at it. That foreknowledge isn't just some abstract concept, it's a crushing weight. A burden that shapes every single interaction, every single lesson, every single piece of advice. It colors everything she does. How does that kind of knowledge change a person? How does it change a teacher? And more importantly, how does it warp the very fabric of the training itself? Imagine knowing with absolute certainty the exact moment your student will stumble, the precise attack that will leave them vulnerable, the devastating blow that will ultimately lead to failure. Would you be able to stand back and watch it happen? Would you allow them to make the same mistakes you did, knowing the consequences? Or would you try to intervene, to guide them, to shield them from the inevitable pain? Hecate chooses the latter. But her intervention isn't always direct. It's subtle, nuanced, often disguised as cryptic advice or seemingly random exercises. Think about her constant emphasis on strategy, on understanding the flow of battle, on anticipating the enemy's moves. It's not just good advice for any aspiring fighter. It's a desperate attempt to arm Melinoë with the tools she needs to overcome the obstacles Hecate knows are coming. She's not just teaching her to fight, she's teaching her, and that survival hinges on Melinoë learning to see the patterns, to recognize the subtle shifts in the battlefield, to anticipate Chronos' every move. It's a monumental task, made even more difficult by the fact that Hecate can't simply tell Melinoë what's going to happen. Why not? Well, consider the implications. If Melinoë knew exactly what Chronos was going to do, she might be able to counter it, to change the course of events. But that very act of changing the future could have unforeseen consequences, potentially creating a worse outcome than the one Hecate is trying to prevent. It's a delicate dance, a constant balancing act between intervention and non-interference. Hecate has to guide Melinoë without explicitly revealing the future, to prepare her for the challenges ahead without robbing her of her agency. It's like trying to teach someone to swim by describing the ocean without ever letting them get wet. Frustrating, right? But Hecate's foreknowledge also affects her relationship with Melinoë on a more personal level. She knows the sacrifices Melinoë will have to make, the pain she will endure, the losses she will suffer. She knows the cost of this war. And that knowledge makes it difficult for her to connect with Melinoë on an emotional level. She can't afford to get too close, to become too invested, because she knows that the closer she gets, the more it will hurt when Melinoë inevitably faces those trials. It's a form of self-preservation, a way of protecting herself from the inevitable pain of watching her younger self suffer. But it also creates a distance between them, a barrier that prevents Melinoë from fully understanding her mentor. She sees Hecate as a powerful, enigmatic figure, but she doesn't see the fear, the regret, the deep-seated pain that lies beneath the surface. And that lack of understanding can be a barrier to Melinoë's growth. She needs to understand Hecate's motivations, her fears, her hopes, in order to truly learn from her. She needs to see her not just as a teacher, but as a person. But how can she do that when Hecate is so carefully guarded, so determined to maintain her emotional distance? The answer, perhaps, lies in the very nature of their relationship. They are, after all, two aspects of the same being, connected by a bond that transcends time and space. And that bond, that shared identity, may be the key to unlocking the secrets that Hecate is so desperately trying to hide. Think about the training grounds. Every obstacle, every challenge, every seemingly random encounter is carefully designed to test Melinoë's abilities, to push her to her limits, to prepare her for the horrors that await her. But it's not just about physical strength or magical prowess. It's also about mental fortitude, about the ability to persevere in the face of adversity, to learn from mistakes, to adapt to changing circumstances. Hecate isn't just training Melinoë to be a warrior, she's training her to be a survivor. And that requires more than just skill. It requires resilience, determination, and a deep understanding of oneself. Hecate knows that Melinoë will face moments of doubt, moments of despair, moments when she will want to give up, and she needs to be prepared for those moments. She needs to have the inner strength to push through the pain, to keep fighting even when all hope seems lost. That's why Hecate's training is so demanding, so relentless, so seemingly unforgiving. She's not trying to break Melinoë, she's trying to forge her into something stronger, something more resilient, something capable of withstanding the immense pressure that she will face. It's like a blacksmith hammering a piece of metal, shaping it, refining it, until it becomes a weapon capable of withstanding the heat of battle. Hecate is the blacksmith, and Melinoë is the metal, and the forge is the training grounds. But there's another element at play here, a subtle but crucial aspect of Hecate's approach to preparation. It's not just about preparing Melinoë for the specific challenges she will face in the fight against Chronos. It's also about preparing her for the possibility that she might fail. Hecate knows that the odds are stacked against them. She knows that Chronos is a formidable opponent, a god of immense power and unwavering resolve. And she knows that even with all of her training, all of her guidance, all of her foreknowledge, Melinoë might still not be able to defeat him. So, what then? What happens if Melinoë fails? That's the question that haunts Hecate, the fear that drives her every action. She can't bear the thought of Melinoë suffering the same fate she did, of being trapped outside of time, of being forced to relive the same failure over and over again. So she prepares her for that eventuality. She teaches her to accept defeat, to learn from her mistakes, to never give up hope, even in the darkest of times. She teaches her that failure is not the end, but an opportunity for growth. It's a lesson that Hecate herself has learned the hard way, and it's a lesson that she desperately wants to impart to Melinoë. But how do you teach someone to accept failure when you're simultaneously trying to prepare them for success? It's a paradox, a seemingly impossible task. But Hecate finds a way. She uses her foreknowledge to create scenarios in which Melinoë is forced to confront her own limitations, to face her fears, to learn from her mistakes. She puts her in situations where she is likely to fail, not to punish her, but to teach her. It's a cruel form of tough love, but it's born out of a deep-seated desire to protect Melinoë from the pain that Hecate herself has experienced. Think about the House of Crossroads. It's not just a place to test Melinoë's combat skills. It's also a place to test her decision-making abilities, her ability to adapt to changing circumstances, her ability to think on her feet. Each choice, each path, each encounter is carefully designed to present Melinoë with a unique challenge, a new opportunity to learn and grow. And Hecate is always watching, always observing, always learning from Melinoë's successes and failures. She's not just a teacher, she's also a student. She's learning from her younger self, gaining new insights into her own past, her own mistakes, her own potential. And that knowledge, that understanding, is helping her to refine her approach to training, to become a better mentor, to give Melinoë the best possible chance of success. But the weight of knowing still hangs heavy on her shoulders. She can't escape the knowledge of what's to come, the inevitable challenges, the potential failures. And that knowledge colours everything she does, every word she speaks, every action she takes. It's a burden that she carries alone, a secret that she can't share with anyone, not even Melinoë. Because to share that secret would be to change the future, to risk creating a worse outcome than the one she's trying to prevent. So she remains silent, a silent guardian, a watchful protector, forever bound to the fate of her younger self. But is that silence truly the best approach? Is she truly protecting Melinoë by withholding the truth? Or is she hindering her growth, preventing her from reaching her full potential? Perhaps the answer lies in finding a way to share her knowledge without explicitly revealing the future, to guide Melinoë without robbing her of her agency. Perhaps the key is to teach her to trust her own instincts, to rely on her own intuition, to see the patterns and anticipate the challenges that lie ahead. Perhaps the greatest lesson Hecate can teach Melinoë is not how to fight Chronos, but how to trust herself. And maybe, just maybe, that trust will be enough to change the course of destiny. But what if, despite all of Hecate's efforts, despite all of Melinoë's training, Chronos still proves to be too powerful? What if the inevitable happens and Melinoë fails? What then? Hecate has prepared Melinoë for that possibility, but has she prepared herself? Can she truly accept the failure of her younger self, knowing that it will mean reliving the same pain, the same regret, the same endless cycle of failure? Or will she find a way to break the cycle, to rewrite destiny, to create a new future for herself and for Melinoë? That's the question that hangs over everything, the uncertainty that fuels Hecate's every action. She's not just fighting Chronos, she's fighting fate itself, and the outcome of that battle is far from certain. But the seeds of a different path might be sown in the most unexpected of places. Hecate, consumed by the need to rewrite her own past, might be overlooking a crucial element, the very world she's trying to reshape. The underworld and its inhabitants are subtly different from the world Zagreus knew. These differences are not accidents, they're clues. And they point to a truth that Hecate, blinded by her own pain, has yet to see. But we'll delve into that next time as we dissect those differences and uncover. The first timeline. I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. Chapter 10. Vengeance versus Understanding. Examining the story's central theme that some problems cannot be solved through force and why acceptance becomes crucial. The clash between vengeance and understanding is more than just a philosophical debate in Hades 2. It's the very engine driving the narrative, the tension that binds Hecate and Melinoë, the core reason why Chronos remains undefeated. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that overwhelming power, perfectly timed strikes, and an arsenal of deadly curses are the only paths to victory. We've been conditioned by countless games, stories, and even aspects of our own lives to believe that force is the ultimate answer. But Hades, too subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, argues against this. Think about Melinoë's initial approach. Fueled by righteous anger, driven by the desire to avenge her family and reclaim what was stolen, she charges headfirst into the fray. She owns her skills, masters her magic, and becomes a whirlwind of nocturnal wrath. Yet, despite her growing power, she consistently fails. She reaches Chronos, yes, but she never truly him. She's caught in a loop, a cycle of violence that mirrors the very titan she seeks to destroy. This isn't a coincidence. It's a deliberate design choice, a thematic reflection baked into the game's core mechanics. The game subtly suggests that Melinoë's rage, while understandable, is also a limitation. It blinds her to other possibilities, other approaches that might prove more effective. She's so focused on the of defeating Chronos, the specific attacks, the perfect build, the optimal strategy, that she overlooks the est. Why did Chronos act as he did? What motivates him? And, perhaps most importantly, what is the true nature of the conflict itself? Hecate, on the other hand, embodies a different perspective. She's seen the rise and fall of empires, witnessed the cyclical nature of history, and understands that violence often begets more violence. Her emotional distance, her seemingly detached demeanor, isn't coldness. It's a strategic choice, a way to maintain clarity and perspective in the face of overwhelming chaos. She knows that Melinoë's rage is a powerful weapon, but also a dangerous liability. It needs to be tempered, controlled, and ultimately channeled into something more constructive. Consider her lessons. They aren't just about mastering magic or honing combat skills, they're about understanding the underlying principles that govern the world, the delicate balance between order and chaos, and the interconnectedness of all things. She's trying to teach Melinoë to see beyond the immediate conflict, to grasp the bigger picture, to understand the forces at play. But perhaps the most telling example of this theme lies in the character of Moros, the god of doom. He's a figure steeped in fatalism, convinced that destiny is fixed and unchangeable. He represents the ultimate expression of acceptance, but an acceptance that borders on resignation. He believes that Chronos' victory is inevitable, that fighting against fate is futile. Melinoë initially is tempted by this perspective. After countless failures, after witnessing the seemingly insurmountable power of Chronos, she begins to question whether her efforts are truly worthwhile. Is she simply delaying the inevitable? Is she destined to repeat the same mistakes over and over again? But Hecate challenges this notion. She argues that while destiny may be powerful, it is not absolute. It can be influenced, shaped, and even rewritten. This isn't about denying the existence of fate, but about understanding its nature. It's about recognizing that we have agency, that we can make choices that alter the course of events. And this is where the concept of understanding truly comes into play. It's not enough to simply accept fate. We must understand it, analyze it, and identify the points where we can intervene. We must learn from our mistakes, adapt our strategies, and never give up hope. This theme extends beyond the immediate conflict with Chronos and touches upon the broader themes of the game. The underworld itself is a place of stagnation, a realm where the past constantly repeats itself. The shades that inhabit its depths are trapped in cycles of regret, remorse, and resentment. They cling to their past grievances, unable to move forward or find peace. But Melinoë, through her interactions with these shades, has the opportunity to break these cycles. She can offer them solace, understanding, and even a chance at redemption. She can help them confront their past traumas, forgive themselves, and find a measure of peace in the afterlife. This isn't about condoning their past actions or excusing their flaws. It's about recognizing their humanity, understanding their motivations, and offering them a path towards healing. It's about breaking the cycle of vengeance and replacing it with a cycle of compassion. Consider the case of Nemesis, the goddess of retribution. She's consumed by a desire for revenge, constantly seeking to punish those who have wronged her. She embodies the very essence of vengeance, the belief that justice can only be achieved through retribution. But Melinoë challenges this perspective. She recognizes that Nemesis's desire for revenge stems from deep-seated pain and trauma. She offers her empathy, understanding, and a chance to move beyond her past grievances. This isn't about denying the validity of Nemesis's anger or excusing the actions of those who have wronged her. It's about recognizing that revenge is a destructive force, that it perpetuates cycles of violence, and that true healing can only come through forgiveness. And this brings us to the crucial role of acceptance. It's not about accepting defeat or resigning ourselves to a predetermined fate. It's about accepting the reality of our situation, acknowledging our limitations, and understanding the complexities of the world around us. It's about accepting that we cannot always control the actions of others, that we will inevitably face setbacks and failures, and that sometimes the best we can do is to learn from our mistakes and move forward. Hecate embodies this principle. She accepts the fact that she failed in her original timeline, that she was unable to defeat Chronos, and that she was cast outside of time. But she doesn't dwell on her past failures. She uses them as a source of knowledge and wisdom, guiding Melinoë and preparing her for the challenges ahead. She understands that dwelling on the past is a futile exercise, that it only serves to perpetuate cycles of regret and resentment. She focuses on the present, on the actions she can take to shape the future, and on the lessons she can impart to her student. But acceptance isn't passive. It's not about simply giving up or resigning ourselves to a predetermined fate. It's about actively choosing to move forward, to learn from our experiences, and to create a better future for ourselves and for others. It's about accepting the fact that we are imperfect beings, that we will inevitably make mistakes, and that the most important thing is to learn from those mistakes and strive to do better. And this is where the true power of understanding lies. It's not just about understanding the world around us, but about understanding ourselves. It's about recognizing our strengths and weaknesses, acknowledging our flaws, and accepting ourselves for who we are. It's about embracing our imperfections, learning from our mistakes, and striving to become the best versions of ourselves. This theme of acceptance extends to the relationship between Melinoë and Zagreus. While they both share the same goal, to defeat Chronos and restore balance to the world, they approach the problem from different perspectives. Melinoë, as we've discussed, is driven by vengeance and a desire to reclaim what was stolen. She relies on her magical abilities, her combat skills, and her unwavering determination to achieve her goals. Zagreus, on the other hand, embodies a more compassionate and understanding approach. He seeks to reconcile with his father, Hades, to understand his motivations, and to find a way to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. He doesn't seek to overthrow his father or to seize control of the underworld. He seeks to understand him, to empathize with him, and to find a way to coexist peacefully. This isn't to say that Zagreus is weak or passive. He's a skilled warrior in his own right, capable of holding his own against the forces of the underworld. But his primary focus is on understanding and reconciliation rather than on vengeance and conquest. And this is why Melinoë cannot defeat Chronos alone. She needs Zagreus's perspective, his compassion, and his ability to see beyond the immediate conflict. She needs to learn from his example, to temper her rage with understanding, and to embrace a more holistic approach to problem solving. The game subtly suggests that the true solution to the conflict with Chronos lies not in brute force, but in understanding. It lies in understanding Chronos' motivations, in understanding the nature of the conflict itself, and in understanding the interconnectedness of all things. It lies in breaking the cycle of vengeance and replacing it with a cycle of compassion, forgiveness, and acceptance. But how does this shift in perspective actually the way Melinoë approaches the fight? Does understanding Chronos somehow weaken him, or does it unlock a new path to victory? And what role does Zagreus ultimately play in this final confrontation? These are the questions we'll need to address as we continue our journey, because understanding the limitations of vengeance is only half the battle. What awaits us next are the concrete ways that a different approach can succeed. And it all begins with examining Hecate's foreknowledge. Chapter 11. The Nature of Sequels. Analyzing how this revelation reframes the relationship between Hades 1 and 2, and what it suggests about continuing complete stories. Hecate's manipulation of time, her existence outside of it, doesn't just illuminate her relationship with Melinoë, it throws the entire structure of Hades and Hades 2 into a brand new light. It forces us to reconsider what a sequel even, and what it can achieve. Think about the typical sequel. It usually expands upon the original, offering new characters, new locations, and a continuation of the established story. But what if a sequel could do more than just continue? What if it could everything we thought we knew about the original? That's precisely what Hades 2 achieves, and it does so by subtly altering the very foundation upon which the first game was built. The original Hades, with Zagreus's relentless escapes, felt complete. It had a definitive ending, a satisfying resolution to the conflict with Hades, and a sense of closure for the characters involved. We, as players, felt like we had truly the story. But now, with the revelations of Hades 2, we realized that the story wasn't quite as complete as we thought. We learned that Zagreus's actions, his struggles, his eventual reconciliation with his father were all occurring within a timeline subtly manipulated by Hecate. A timeline designed to prepare for a threat far greater than Hades himself. This changes everything. It's not just that we're getting a new story, we're getting a new on the old one. We're seeing the events of Hades through a different lens, one that reveals hidden layers of meaning and complexity. Consider Zagreus's constant defiance of his father. In the original game, it was a personal rebellion, a son seeking freedom from an overbearing parent. But now, knowing what we know about Hecate's plans, Zagreus's actions can be seen as part of a larger strategy, a necessary step in preparing the underworld for the arrival of Chronos. His escapes weren't just acts of defiance, they were training exercises, preparing him for a future conflict he didn't even know existed. His relationships with the Olympians, his acquisition of their boons, were all contributing to a power base that would ultimately be needed to defend against the Titan of Time. And what about Hades himself? In the first game, he was the antagonist, the stern and unyielding father figure standing in Zagreus's way. But now, him as a pawn in Hecate's game, a figure whose actions were being subtly guided and influenced to ensure the survival of the underworld. The entire dynamic shifts. It's like watching a play a second time. But this time, you know the ending. You notice details you missed before, subtle hints and foreshadowing that take on new significance. You understand the character's motivations in a deeper, more profound way. Hades 2 doesn't just add to the story of Hades, it enriches the original narrative, giving it a depth and complexity that wasn't apparent before. It's a testament to the power of sequels to do more than just rehash old ideas. They can fundamentally alter our understanding of the stories we thought we knew. This approach to sequels is incredibly bold, and it raises some interesting questions about the nature of storytelling itself. Are sequels simply extensions of the original story, or can they be something more? Can they be used to reframe, reinterpret, and ultimately deepen our understanding of the narratives we love? Hades 2 suggests that the answer is a resounding yes. It demonstrates that a sequel can be a powerful tool for exploring new themes, developing existing characters, and ultimately creating a richer and more rewarding experience for the audience. Think about other examples in media. Consider how prequels, like the Star Wars prequels, attempted to add context to the original trilogy. While their reception was mixed, they still aimed to enhance the established narrative by showing us the events that led up to it. But Hades 2 takes a different approach. It doesn't just show us what happened before, it reveals the hidden forces at play, the unseen influences that shaped the events of the first game. It's like discovering that the seemingly random events of your life were actually part of a carefully orchestrated plan designed to prepare you for a future challenge. It's a mind-bending concept, and it's one that Hades 2 explores with remarkable skill. And it's not just the overarching story that's affected. The individual characters, their motivations, their relationships, all of these are viewed through a different lens in light of Hecate's manipulations. Take Nyx, for example. In the first game, she was a supportive figure, offering guidance and assistance to Zagreus on his journey. But now, we can see that her actions were likely influenced by Hecate, that she was playing a role in the larger plan to prepare for Chronos' return. Her cryptic advice, her subtle nudges, her unwavering support, all of these take on new meaning when viewed in the context of Hecate's grand strategy. She wasn't just helping Zagreus escape, she was helping to shape him into the warrior he needed to become. And what about Achilles? His unwavering loyalty to Zagreus, his willingness to train him and guide him, can now be seen as part of a larger commitment to protecting the underworld from external threats. He wasn't just a mentor, he was a guardian, preparing Zagreus for a battle he couldn't even imagine. Even minor characters, like Dusa, the ever-helpful Gorgon maid, take on new significance. Her seemingly innocent actions, her tireless dedication to her duties, can be seen as part of a larger effort to maintain order and stability in the underworld, to ensure that it's ready to face whatever challenges may come. Hades 2 forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about these characters, to see them not just as individuals with their own motivations, but as pieces in a larger puzzle, all working towards a common goal, even if they don't fully understand it themselves. This is the true genius of Hades 2. It doesn't just tell a new story, it enriches the old one. It doesn't just add to the mythology, it deepens it. It doesn't just give us new characters, it gives us new perspectives on the characters we already know and love. And it does all of this by subtly manipulating the timeline, by revealing the hidden hand of Hecate, the sorceress who exists outside of time and who is determined to shape the future to her own design. But this raises a crucial question. If Hecate is so powerful, if she can manipulate time itself, why does she need Melinoë? Why can't she simply rewrite history to prevent Chronos from ever returning? The answer, I believe, lies in the nature of destiny itself. Hecate may be able to influence the timeline, but she can't completely control it. She can nudge events in a certain direction, but she can't force them to go where she wants. Destiny, in the world of Hades, is not a fixed and immutable thing. It's more like a river, constantly flowing and changing, but with certain currents and eddies that are difficult to alter. Hecate can try to redirect the river, but she can't stop it from flowing altogether. And that's where Melinoë comes in. Melinoë is not just a student. She's an agent of change, a force of nature who can disrupt the established order and create new possibilities. She's the wild card in Hecate's plan, the element of unpredictability that can make all the difference. Hecate needs Melinoë because she needs someone who can act independently, someone who can make choices that Hecate herself cannot. She needs someone who can challenge the established order, who can push the boundaries of what's possible, who can ultimately defy destiny itself. This is why the relationship between Hecate and Melinoë is so crucial. It's not just a teacher-student relationship, it's a partnership, a collaboration between two powerful forces who are working together to achieve a common goal. And it's a relationship that is constantly evolving, constantly changing, as Melinoë grows and develops her own powers and abilities. She's not just a puppet in Hecate's hands, she's a force to be reckoned with, a warrior who is capable of shaping her own destiny. But the fact remains that Hecate is holding back. She knows more than she lets on. She sees the potential outcomes, the myriad possibilities that lie ahead, and she's carefully guiding Melinoë down a path that she believes will lead to victory. But is this the right path? Is Hecate's vision of the future the only one that's possible? And what sacrifices will be necessary to achieve it? These are the questions that drive the narrative of Hades 2, and they're questions that are made all the more compelling by the revelations about Hecate's true nature and her manipulation of time. The game forces us to confront the nature of free will, the limits of destiny, and the consequences of our choices. It challenges us to think about the stories we tell ourselves, the myths we create, and the ways in which they shape our understanding of the world. And it does all of this in a way that is both engaging and thought-provoking, both entertaining and deeply meaningful. Hades 2 is not just a great game, it's a work of art, a masterpiece of storytelling that will stay with you long after you finish playing it. But the implications of Hecate's foreknowledge extend beyond the immediate conflict with Chronos. It also shapes her interactions and her approach to teaching Melinoë, creating a complex emotional landscape that we're only beginning to understand. But to understand this, we must delve into the psychology of self-mentorship. Chapter 12. Love Across Time. The emotional resolution of Hecate's journey, the meaning of self-forgiveness, and the ultimate message about growth, redemption, and the courage to try again. Hecate's journey, when seen through this lens of self-love and self-forgiveness, becomes something truly extraordinary. It transcends the typical mentor-student dynamic and enters the realm of a deeply personal, almost painful, act of reconciliation. But how does one reconcile with oneself across the vast expanse of time and catastrophic failure? The answer, surprisingly, lies in the small acts of kindness and guidance Hecate extends to Melinoë. Each lesson, each cryptic clue, each carefully chosen spell isn't just about preparing Melinoë to face Chronos. It's about Hecate forgiving herself for the mistakes that led to the original timeline's destruction. It's about giving her younger self the tools and knowledge she desperately wishes she'd had the first time around. Think about it. The original Hecate, the Melinoë who faced Chronos, was likely fueled by righteous fury, a desire for vengeance for her fallen family and the suffering of the underworld. But vengeance, as we've seen, is a blunt instrument. It might feel good in the moment, but it rarely solves the underlying problem. It often creates new ones. Hecate, having lived through the consequences of that single-minded pursuit, understands this. That's why her training of Melinoë emphasizes strategy, knowledge, and understanding, not just raw power. She's not just teaching Melinoë to fight, she's teaching her, she's fighting, and what she hopes to achieve beyond simply defeating Chronos. And this is where the self-forgiveness comes in. By guiding Melinoë down a different path, a path that prioritizes knowledge and understanding over blind rage, Hecate is essentially rewriting her own history. She's saying, I made mistakes. I acted out of anger and grief, but I can learn from those mistakes. I can do better. This act of self-forgiveness isn't easy. It requires Hecate to confront her past failures, to acknowledge the pain she caused, both to herself and to others. It requires her to be vulnerable, to admit that she wasn't perfect, that she made choices she now regrets. But it's also incredibly empowering. By forgiving herself, Hecate frees herself from the shackles of her past. She's no longer defined by her mistakes. She's defined by her willingness to learn from them, to grow, and to become a better version of herself. And in this case, that better version of herself is the mentor, the guide, the teacher who can help Melinoë avoid the same pitfalls. Now, let's consider the emotional weight of this. Imagine being forced to relive your greatest failure, not as a passive observer, but as an active participant, responsible for guiding your younger self through the very circumstances that led to your downfall. The pressure must be immense. Every decision Hecate makes, every piece of advice she gives, carries the weight of her past. She knows the potential consequences of failure, the devastating impact it can have on Melinoë and on the entire underworld. And yet she can't simply tell Melinoë what to do. She has to guide her, to teach her, to allow her to make her own choices, even if those choices lead to mistakes. This is the paradox of self-mentorship. Hecate has to be both the all-knowing mentor and the fallible student. She has to trust her younger self to make the right decisions, even when she knows that those decisions might be wrong. She has to allow Melinoë to learn from her own mistakes, just as she herself learned from hers. And this is where the true beauty of their relationship lies. It's not just about Hecate teaching Melinoë, it's about Hecate learning from Melinoë. It's about seeing her own past through fresh eyes, about recognizing the strengths and weaknesses she possessed as a younger woman, and about understanding the choices she made, even as she now regrets them. Through Melinoë, Hecate gains a new perspective on her own history. She sees the potential she possessed, the courage she displayed, and the unwavering determination that drove her to fight against Chronos in the first place. She also sees the flaws, the impulsiveness, and the lack of knowledge that ultimately led to her downfall. But instead of dwelling on those flaws, Hecate uses them as a learning opportunity. She focuses on helping Melinoë avoid the same mistakes, on guiding her down a path that is both more effective and more sustainable. She's not just trying to rewrite history, she's trying to heal it. The ultimate message here is one of hope and redemption. It's about the power of self-forgiveness, the importance of learning from our mistakes, and the courage to try again, even when we've failed in the past. It's about recognizing that we are all capable of growth and change, that we can all become better versions of ourselves regardless of the challenges we face. And it's about the transformative power of love, not just romantic love, but the deeper, more profound love we have for ourselves and for others. It's about recognizing that we are all interconnected, that our actions have consequences, and that we have a responsibility to care for one another. Hecate's journey is a testament to this power of love. It's a story about a woman who was willing to confront her past, to forgive herself for her mistakes, and to dedicate her life to helping her younger self achieve a better future. It's a story about the enduring power of hope, the unwavering pursuit of knowledge, and the transformative potential of self-love. And what about the player? You, experiencing this journey through Melinoë. You are, in a way, also participating in this act of self-forgiveness and self-improvement. Each run, each failure, each new discovery is a chance to learn, to grow, and to become a better player. You are learning alongside Melinoë, guided by Hecate's wisdom, and empowered to overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges. The game, therefore, becomes a metaphor for life itself. It's a reminder that we all make mistakes, that we all face setbacks, and that we all have the potential to learn and grow from our experiences. It's a reminder that we are not defined by our failures, but by our willingness to try again, to persevere, and to never give up on ourselves. So, as you guide Melinoë through the underworld, remember Hecate's journey. Remember the weight of her past, the depth of her self-forgiveness, and the unwavering love she has for her younger self. And remember that you too are capable of achieving great things, of overcoming seemingly impossible challenges, and of becoming the best version of yourself. But there's another layer to this. It's not just about Hecate forgiving herself, it's about Melinoë accepting Hecate. Think about it from Melinoë's perspective. She's being trained by someone who is, in essence, her future self. That's a lot to process. She has to reconcile the image she has of herself with the reality of who she might become. She has to trust Hecate's guidance, even when she doesn't fully understand it. And she has to accept that Hecate has made mistakes, that she's not perfect, and that she's still learning and growing. This requires a tremendous amount of trust and understanding on Melinoë's part. She has to be willing to see Hecate as a flawed human being, not as some unattainable ideal. She has to be willing to forgive her for her past mistakes and to accept her for who she is, both good and bad. And in doing so, Melinoë also learns to forgive herself. She recognizes that she too will make mistakes, that she too will face setbacks, and that she too will have to learn from her experiences. But she also learns that she is capable of growth and change, that she can overcome any challenge, and that she is worthy of love and acceptance, both from herself and from others. This is the true emotional resolution of Hecate's journey. It's not just about her forgiving herself, it's about Melinoë accepting her, and about both of them learning to love and accept themselves, flaws and all. It's about recognizing that they are both part of the same whole, that they are both connected by a shared history and a shared destiny. And it's about the ultimate message of the game, that growth, redemption, and the courage to try again are always possible regardless of the challenges we face. That even in the darkest of times, there is always hope, and that even after the most devastating failures, we can always find a way to rebuild and to move forward. This message resonates deeply within the roguelike structure of the game itself. Each run, each failure, each new attempt is a testament to this idea. You, as the player, are constantly learning from your mistakes, adapting your strategy, and pushing yourself to overcome new challenges. You are embodying the very spirit of growth, redemption, and the courage to try again. And as you finally reach the end of the game, as you finally defeat Chronos, you are not just celebrating Melinoë's victory, you are celebrating your own. You are celebrating your ability to learn, to grow, and to overcome adversity. You are celebrating the power of self-forgiveness, the importance of self-love, and the transformative potential of the human spirit. But what does this mean for the future? What does it mean for the relationship between Hades 1 and Hades 2? And how does this new understanding of Hecate and Melinoë's journey reframe our perception of the entire Hades universe? The answers, as always, lie deeper within the mythological threads and the connections between the gods themselves. So, what happens to Zagreus in this new, potentially altered timeline? That's where we're heading next.